What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Sunday night recap presented by FanDuel and apparently presented by Jay specifically this week.
I gotcha.
Guys, I'm your host, Simon, joined as always by my co-hosts, Josh and Jay. We are here to break down the Sunday games, the Sunday slate from a fantasy perspective, and do a little bit of preview on Sunday night football that I know we are all excited for. Before we get started, though, everyone watching, I want to remind you, if you are watching this video and you haven't done so already, hit the like button if you are on YouTube, and make sure to subscribe to FanDuel's YouTube channel at FanDuel, and then head on over to Twitch and follow them over there if you're watching over there. FanDuel has a whole team of awesome content creators across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. They're helping you win some money and win your leagues. MySpace, Zynga, LinkedIn. You can find them everywhere over there. So make sure you guys are subscribed across all platforms. What's up, JL? Welcome in. He said Big J. Yeah, we like it better whenever Jay's in here, Big. So maybe we'll just stay like this.
It just works. It works for me.
I'm fine.
What's up, Kev? Welcome in.
Actually, I'm not fine with this. You can take it down.
And Joey said Jay is hosting. Let's go. Guys, for everyone watching as well, I apologize for my voice. It is quitting on me, but we're gonna keep on going. We're gonna keep on powering through. Jay, I'm excited that Joey's
it's like
in
you're
here.
trying to be like, you know,
like a nice, like smoky, husky voice.
Tonight's Sunday night game is between the Chicago Bears and the Green.
Actually, you might
Bay
start putting people
Packers.
to sleep.
I like the way you said Bears. Like you had like a what is that episode of The Office where they're doing the murder mystery? Like you sounded like what's the name? Caleb Crawdad. You're like the Bears.
The Bears. Oh man, the chat is all excited about each other. They don't even care about us up here, guys. But that's okay because we're going to start talking about the game that we've got going on tonight between the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. The most recent line I'm seeing is that the Packers are favored by 11.5 points going into this game. Josh, I'm going to pass it over to you now. I know you probably have some player props from this game that you want to talk about from the FanDuel Sportsbook.
There are a couple that stood out to me. Like you said, it's 11.5 point spread at the moment on the FanDuel Sportsbook. The Chicago Bears are underdogs. The Packers are favored by 11.5, and it's a 43-point over-under. I'm actually taking the over in this game personally. And then when I'm looking at the prop bets, one that really stands out to me is David Montgomery. It's over under 18.5 receiving yards. Just game script wise, I kind of see the Packers taking a lead here, and David Montgomery is still their best running back. So I see him being involved in the passing game. So I do think the over on the 18.5 receiving yards is the way to go there. How's that make you guys feel?
Well, Josh, I have a question for you.
Hit me.
With Fields under center,
yeah,
he's going to be a little more likely to run with the ball instead of dumping it off. Does that worry you at all?
It does a little bit, but at the same time, I think David Montgomery is the key to this offense. And if he's not involved, I really don't see the Bears standing a chance. So if they're going to be down, he's still going to be on the field a lot. I think he's going to get a couple catches, and I think it's going to be over 18.5 receiving yards for me personally. But that's a great point, Jay.
I'm with you, Josh. I think if I had to pick a side on that one, I'd be taking the over there as well. Game script seems to go that way. And Brian's asking, will there be 50 mile per hour winds today? Asking
Not
for
this time.
Not this time. And I just looked it up just to make sure I wasn't lying to you. They're projecting it's going to be cold, 36 degrees, but they're saying 10 mile per hour winds, which is well within the capabilities of these teams to operate within. Very normal.
Brian said that for a reason. He's in my home league, and I went into Monday Night Football with a 7-point lead, and I won because Mac Jones and Jacoby Myers couldn't get 7 points, so put me in the playoffs.
Put you in the playoffs. Nice. That Monday night miracle.
Yeah. And then one other thing that stood out to me is I'm just hammering the over on Devontae Adams 7.5 catches as well. I feel comfortable that Devontae Adams is the best receiver. Chicago doesn't have anyone that can really stop them in my mind. Aaron Rodgers is going to go at him all day. 7.5 catches. I'm taking the over. I think he's going to get 9 catches tonight.
You know, I also JL coming in, he says it's also right there on Number Fire. I didn't have to Google anything. 33 degrees with 13 mile per hour winds. I could have just looked at my screen. So thank you, JL. That is my bad. I
have no clue either, Simon. Don't worry about it.
So. But Josh, that one, the only concern I would have there is taking the over on receptions on a team that's favored by 11.5 points.
Yeah.
I could see this game being funneled straight through AJ Dillon, and Aaron Jones after even the first half, and maybe Devontae Adams has 5 catches in the first half and doesn't get to 8 over the second half. Oh, sorry, puberty hitting a little bit right there. But
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a while. Maybe next November I'll be able to actually grow a mustache. But yeah, I would have some concerns there. I understand taking the over.
I'm with you, Josh. I think that this could be Aaron Rodgers' last game in Lambeau against the Bears. He's a spiteful type of guy. I could see him just going off tonight. And
they're coming off a bye.
Right. I think I'm with you. Simon, everything you said is completely within the realm of possibility. But I just see Aaron Rodgers just wanting to destroy the Bears in what could be his last home game versus the Bears in Lambeau.
Yeah, 100%.
Fully narrative driven, but I sometimes.
And I do want to mention the odds are good on the 7.5. The odds are favored, so you're getting plus money with betting on the 7.5 over there. So I just think it's gonna. I think they're gonna look good. I think the passing game is gonna look really good tonight.
Josh calling it. So Josh, those are your 2 favorite player props in this game tonight.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Well, then I know you're excited about those, but probably a little bit less excited to talk about the next game we are going to be talking about.
Don't make me do it.
The first game of our slate in the Baltimore Ravens. I know they didn't win this one, but every single week they somehow are part of the most exciting game. They do it over and over again. It didn't look like it was going to happen this week, but they had a nice comeback attempt there at the end of the game. Onside kick recovered, but the Browns pulled it out 24-22, extending my hope that they'll make the playoffs, only for them to crush it later in the season. But Josh, what did you see out of this game?
I mean, this was a tough interdivisional rivalry. You knew it was going to be tight. It didn't look like it was going to be tight with Lamar Jackson going down early with the ankle injury. We don't know the severity of it yet, but it did. He went out in the first quarter, and Tyler Huntley took over, and he looked pretty good in replacement. I mean, he's a runner. He's very similar to Lamar Jackson in a lot of ways. So for fantasy purposes, I do like him going forward. I think he can be a weekly streamer if Lamar Jackson's held out, but we still have to see the severity of that injury. Just to let you guys know, the Ravens were underdogs going into this game, 3.5-point underdogs on the FanDuel Sportsbook. It was a 44-point over-under, and they had the over on this one. The Browns did pull it out, and now they are 7-6, and the Ravens are 8-5. On the Ravens side of the ball, I mentioned Huntley looked good from a fantasy perspective. I think this is going to be more of a check down offense going forward if Lamar Jackson can't play. So, guys, can we trust any of the Ravens options outside of Mark Andrews without Lamar Jackson in there? Simon, I want to come to you first. Mark Andrews still had a great game. He had plenty of points, 11 catches, 115 yards and a touchdown. So I think he's fine, but what about Hollywood Brown? What about the running game? Do you trust these guys?
First, JL said Cleveland barely beat the second string QB. JL, don't be that fan. Okay. Just accept the loss. Be okay with it. Go forward. No one's here bragging. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. An L's an L. But on top of that, I don't know, Josh. Like I 100% agree with the Mark Andrews is the one that I trust the most. But we saw Huntley complete some, not just some like good passes, some very pretty passes that you would expect from a starting quarterback. There was the one down the sideline to Rashad Bateman that stands out in my mind. That was just absolutely.
That was a sick catch.
It was a sick catch.
Awesome.
Well, and the placement of that ball was exactly where it needed to be to give anybody a chance at even catching it. Just gorgeous. So I'm downgrading these guys, but I am a little bit optimistic that they might be able to return value. It caps their upside, but I'm still plugging Marquise Brown in. Rashad Bateman's still in that emergency flex start category for me, but Brown, it just caps his upside.
Jay, do you kind of more or less agree with Simon there?
I pretty much agree. The only thing I will say, I could be a little bit of a bump for Devonta Freeman, especially if they do continue with the check downs, it could catch some extra passes. Even though Huntley is a runner, he's not Lamar Jackson, so you could see some more work in the red zone on the goal line for Devonta Freeman. So, this offense isn't going to look as good as it would have with Lamar Jackson under center. So I think it keeps Devonta Freeman's value afloat. So pretty much the same for him. Mark Andrews, same. The rest, we don't know what this offense is going to look like. Huntley came off the bench. The team was, the Browns were preparing for Lamar Jackson. So even though they play similar, you are going to prepare differently for different players. So if a team has some tape, next week, which early reports look like Lamar Jackson is going to miss anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. That's preliminary. There's no definite. So he could potentially be out for the fantasy football playoffs. which is just a dagger to many teams, including mine. But it hurts. I'm not a Ravens fan, but I'm a big Lamar Jackson fan. But I think
you can tell by the jersey behind you, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that really the only guy you can trust is Mark Andrews.
Yeah. And I tend to agree with you. I think you downgrade the entire offense, including Mark Andrews a little bit, but he's going to be so targeted in the tight end landscape. He's an automatic start. But everyone else, I'm extremely nervous for. We saw what Huntley did with the Bears. The offense was kind of anemic. Mark Andrews is a start. I'm nervous for the rest of the Ravens going forward. That's my take here. But on the Brown side of the ball, it was fine. There wasn't a lot of fantasy production. The Ravens are much better at shutting down the run compared to the pass. And I think that's a lot of what we saw here. Look, the Browns are a run-first team. They want to establish the run, and the Ravens are a stop-the-run kind of team, right? So I think we saw that come to head, and Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones, they were good, and Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt did go down with a little bit of an injury, but Nick Chubb was relatively inefficient, especially for Nick Chubb, right? So I don't think we can take a ton away from this game. I think the Browns are still going to try to establish the run going forward, and Nick Chubb is going to be the most valuable fantasy asset. And, Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones, they are emergency flex for me. Just want to see if you guys agree with me there. Simon, I know you're a Browns fan, so I do want to come to you first. Do you think we can trust Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones in our fantasy lineups at all? Because they had solid games. Jarvis Landry, 5 catches and a touchdown. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 5 catches, 90 yards. What do you think?
Yeah, these guys are emergency flexes, but they're very different kinds of emergency flexes. Jarvis Landry, this is about his ceiling. He gets that touchdown. He's going to be targeted. But I think his floor is probably around 6 points. Know what I mean? Like he's got a much smaller range than Donovan Peoples-Jones does. So if you just need a safe player to get you 6 to 12 points, Jarvis Landry is the kind of player you can plug in. Donovan Peoples-Jones is an emergency start if you need that upside. You need that boom. He can go off for a big touchdown any given week. He's the kind of player that can have 0 yards 3 weeks in a row that can get you 140 receiving yards in a week off of like 4 catches. So if you need like some serious upside in that flex spot, Peoples-Jones is the guy there. But you hit the nail on the head. This is a rush first offense. It's going to continue to be a rush first offense. And so these receivers aren't great fantasy options. Now, I will say, I'm sorry, go ahead. We weren't talking about the tight end, Jake.
Okay.
No. I mean, you go ahead and, but real fast on the Austin Hooper front, I don't think we can trust him because the other 2 tight ends were held out, one due to COVID, one due to an injury, right? So
what I was going to say is, I think if both other tight ends are out, whether it's Austin Hooper alone, Harrison Bryant alone, David Njoku alone, I think then you can trust the Cleveland tight end because they do use their tight ends. It's just usually a rotation of all 3 of those guys. So we saw it this week when Austin Hooper was the only guy on the field. He was a good fantasy option. And I think if we see another week like that going forward, it's going to be the same thing. But if even 2 of those guys are healthy, bench them both.
You more or less agree with the passing game for the Browns, Jay?
For the most part, the only thing I do disagree on is I don't think you guys are giving Jarvis Landry enough credit. Over the past 3 games, he's averaging over 8 targets. Yes, he doesn't necessarily have a super high upside in this run-first offense, but you tell me a wide receiver is going to get over 8 targets in a game. I don't care if it's a run-first offense or not. He's somebody that I'm willing to plug in as a back-end wide receiver 2. I'm more comfortable as a flex or a wide receiver 3, but if you're in a pinch with injuries this week with buys, but luckily we won't have to deal with that next week. I think Jarvis Landry is a rock solid play, as I like to say.
So we got Craig in here. What's up, Craig? He said, hello, duelers of fans. And we are dueling all the fans right here. And Craig says, I raked leagues instead of watching my Cowboys almost blow it. And my heart thanked me when I saw how it went near the end. Did you rake leaves or did you rake leagues, Craig? Because otherwise you're going to need to educate me on what the second one is right there. Also,
you're raking up the leagues. He's got he's in all these leagues. He's just raking them up, getting the wins.
Raking leagues while he's raking leaves.
Ooh.
There we go. Josh, Brian had a question for us. And I'm sure we were going to talk about these backs, but he says, with Hunt with the ankle injury, would that give Johnson any room to be relevant?
This is one of our favorite topics, Simon, actually. When it comes down to it.
You want me to do my rant again?
I was going to say, that's more of a question for Simon, I thought.
No, listen, Simon's voice is a little hoarse today. Let me cover this for you, Simon. I think I can more or less cover it.
You got it.
If Johnson is the only running back in this backfield, he is an excellent fantasy start. He's got to be in your lineup. If Nick Chubb is healthy, if Kareem Hunt's healthy, if either one of them are healthy, I do not want Johnson in my lineup. Yes, he looked good in this game when he got the opportunities, but he's not going to get enough to be fantasy relevant most weeks. Right, Simon?
100% agree. Thanks. Now I don't have to say
it. So we would recommend not starting Johnson as long as Nick Chubb is healthy.
100%. Joey saying Simon's voice is a pony. I don't know what that means, but I'll take it.
I said
Joey.
Horse, so I guess he's going to, yeah.
Also, welcome in, Herms. What's up? Glad to have you in here. Josh, anything else?
More or less sums it up. Yeah, that sums it up.
Guys, and we're going to move on to our next game. The next game we're talking about, Craig alluded to it in the chat a little bit, but we had another very exciting game that came down to the very end. The Dallas Cowboys versus the Washington Football
Team. You didn't expect it.
This was wild, but they kept the W. They managed to pull it out 27-20, staying on top of their division.
Yeah, and even though the final score was within a touchdown, the game wasn't as close as it showed. Washington came coming back at the end. They were 6.5-point favorite. Dak struggled again. He only threw 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 211 yards. This was supposed to be a cake matchup. Washington's given up the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, with matchups going up in the playoffs against the Giants, Washington again, and the Cardinals. Josh, I'll come to you first. Dak Prescott is a top blank QB for the fantasy football playoffs.
Dak Prescott is still a top 10 quarterback for me for the fantasy playoffs. When it comes down to it, he's got the talent, he's got the weapons. It was kind of a strange game, right? He's got the New York Giants coming up next week, the Washington football team again. So when it comes down to it, if he's on my fantasy team and I don't have one of the, top 5, top 6, top 7 options, he's probably still going to be my starter.
I think at worst, he's top 8 in my eyes. You've got Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson. Well, if Lamar's healthy, right? We're not sure about that. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and then you could throw Aaron Rodgers up there. But I think Dak probably fits in somewhere after those top 5.
Maybe Jalen Hurts, right?
Maybe Jalen Hurts, yeah. So I think given those names, he's safely top 8. Like he's a guy that you're going to be playing. I can hardly imagine benching him on your fantasy team going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you guys, especially with those 2 matchups. Even though he didn't play that great against Washington today, 2 weeks could be a completely different story and against my awful New York Football Giants next week. So the wide receivers, Amari Cooper had a solid game, 5 catches, 51 yards and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb had 7 catches, 61 yards, and Michael Gallup had 5 catches for 60 yards. I think this is really what you're going to see the rest of the season from the Cowboys wide receivers. It's going to be, similar to Tampa Bay, where, you've got your top 2 guys, you've got your third player who can put up some decent points, but it's really going to be hit or miss. Whoever gets the touchdown is probably going to be the most valuable for that offense, especially with Dak Prescott not necessarily playing his best ball right now. Speaking of not playing his best football right now, Zeke, with no Tony Pollard, was out carried by Corey Clement. He rushed for 45 yards and a catch. He is battling injury, but he's only averaging 11.4 points per game over the past 4 games and under double digits for the past 2. He hasn't rushed for over 70 yards since week 5.
What?
Simon, we'll start with Simon. Would you consider benching Zeke for the fantasy playoffs?
It depends what your options are, right? Like if your other options are
Devonta Freeman.
Oh, that's such a dirty question.
That's even harder with the I'd probably still playing Zeke, but that's around the range. You know what I mean? That's where you start asking those questions now, where before we kind of viewed Zeke as a locked and loaded top 12 guy each and every week. He's if this is how they're going to use him, if he's this banged up, he's an RB2. And that's how you got to view him.
Josh?
He's a back end RB2. I'm probably still starting him over Freeman. I think he's going to have a little bit more touchdown upside, right? And that's where he's going to make his living, maybe the rest of the fantasy year when it comes down to it, because he's not looking extremely efficient. But if he falls into the end zone, you're probably going to be fine having him in your lineup, but he's been disappointing. You really have to lower your expectations for Zeke.
All right, let's do an impromptu name game. I've got some names that we're
I was
going
right. Hit me. Hit me.
Yeah.
You're going to say the one I was going to say. I know it. I'm positive of it.
Saquon Barkley or Zeke?
That is not the one I was thinking, but
Saquon.
that is a good one. I'll go Saquon as well.
Let's see. Myles Gaskin against the Jets or Zeke in Week 15, if he's back, obviously.
Against the Jets, probably Myles Gaskin at that point, right? Like we look at what Zeke's been doing over the past month and at what Gaskin's been doing over the past month. Gaskin has turned it on over this past month in a Dolphins offense that seems to be peaking at the right time. They seem to be getting their stuff together. So I'll go Gaskin, and that one hurts. That hurts to say.
In a PPR league, it's Gaskin.
I'm with you guys. As much as it hurts to say, yeah, I'm with you. All right, I got two more for you guys. James Robinson.
Yep, that's the one I was thinking. Give me Zeke.
Yeah.
Zero trust in what Urban Meyer's doing down there. And even if I trusted him, the Jacksonville offense is enough to scare you away from a running back. Even if you have full trust in the head coach.
Trust me. We'll get there.
I mean, it's got to be Zeke over James Robinson. You might be disappointed with what you got out of Zeke the last few weeks, but check out James Robinson. Yeah, you're a lot more disappointed with that when it comes down to it. So
I really want to say James
Houston.
Robinson. Exactly what I was about to say. I want to say James Robinson, but I can't.
The answer should be James Robinson.
It should be James Robinson. A slam dunk for James Robinson. But
it should be.
You can't. All right, I got one more for you, although I believe he did leave the game today with an injury. If he's healthy, Melvin Gordon or Zeke?
Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, it's no hesitation for me.
There we are.
Melvin Gordon was and have an exact. We'll talk about this Broncos game, I'm sure, as well. But he was back and looked good. He's ready to go.
On the other side of the ball, the Washington football team, Taylor Heineke was abysmal. You know, he had a stretch in the middle of the season where he was looking fantasy viable. He was playing pretty well, but barely able to throw over 100 yards, threw a pick and a touchdown. Was replaced by Kyle Allen before the end of the game. He looked decent. He was able to make it game at least exciting, and potentially there's a chance that they could have completed this comeback, but it did not happen. Gibson came back down to earth after scoring over 20 points in the past two games, which isn't surprising though. Dallas has given up the third fewest fantasy points to running back, so especially
who the hell is Jonathan Williams?
That sounds like a creative player for Madden. No, it sounds like a creative player for Madden. So,
Jonathan Williams.
Got
the most carries for this team.
Do you guys have any concern for Antonio Gibson throughout the fantasy playoffs? Or do you think this is just a one-off?
I wish they were like down by 300 points or something like that, so I could say this was just a game script thing for Antonio Gibson. But like, you look at the reasons we were concerned earlier in the season about his workload being limited because of that fracture in his shin that doesn't just go away. How do you not get concerned when you see a line like this for him? But he's still got 10 carries. The past couple of weeks, they've been loading him up 20 plus carries. I'm still trusting him. Like the concerns are there, but I'm still going to plug him and play him as if he's the workhorse back for this team.
Josh?
Well, he also fumbled this game, and I think that's part of the reason why he didn't get more carries, and they kind of went to the backups a little bit here. So going forward, like real fast, we were just talking about Zeke. I'm starting Antonio Gibson over Zeke.
Oh yeah,
some context.
No
there.
question.
So,
absolutely.
Without a doubt.
When will coaches
I
stop
guess
with
still
this
have
crap?
confidence.
Like with the you fumble your bench. Like, come on. Like these
it's not
are
like
these
you're
are
benching the
adults.
quarterback every time he throws an interception. You know, right?
Like it'd be different if it's somebody who has a fumbling problem, but you see it, way too often. A guy, who doesn't have a fumbling problem, one fumble, you're benched for the half or you're benched for the game.
Antonio Gibson has had a bit of a fumbling problem.
Last year he did.
I think
he has it this year,
part of this issue. I think a little bit. He's had a little bit of a fumbling issue. So going forward, as long as he's not fumbling, he's gonna probably have some solid fantasy production.
God, who's really likely to not fumble? The guy who just fumbled and is really upset that he fumbled the ball. Like, I know we see it all the time, but like, come on. Like, the next time he's on that field, he's going to be like, do not fumble this ball. Do not fumble this ball. Do not fumble this ball. I hate whenever coaches do that.
Yeah, and I'm with you guys. I think I was just starting to feel comfortable with Antonio Gibson, and that comfort level is gone. He still has that sky high upside. You're still starting him, but you got to be concerned that this happens, that he does get benched for a fumble, or the way that this offense has looked, that he's just not going to be able to produce anything. I will say, for both Terry McLaurin, if he's able to come back from a concussion, and for this offense as a whole, I hope Kyle Allen starts next week. Because Taylor Heineke's it seems like his deal with the devil is gone. Like he's just not played that well as of late.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced Kyle Allen is going to be better if you give him multiple starts in a row. I'm of the mindset that
can't be much worse for Terry McLaurin though.
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin did get a concussion too.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that it's better if Kyle Allen is the starter. I would still feel more comfortable with Heineke, but I understand where you're coming from, Jay.
Right. Just basically shaking it up, trying something new because McLaurin hasn't done much as of late, and he did get a concussion. Cam Sims had the most yards, 3 catches for 69 yards. Nice. Adam Humphries had the most targets on the team with 4 catches for 34 yards. If McLaurin does miss time, are you guys interested in any pass catchers on the Washington football team?
Nope.
If anyone, it's Cam Simmons. If you're really desperate, but again, I'm going to be pretty hands off of the situation. If McLaurin's not good.
The only reason you're interested in McLaurin is because of the insane talent he has. Now, there's not another wide receiver with that talent level to overcome the quarterback situation, the offense, like Terry McLaurin does.
What about Curtis Samuel or Diami Brown? Any interest in either one of those guys?
You know what, Curtis? I take back what I said a little bit. Curtis Samuel could be interesting as a flex type of player, as a plug-in if you need him.
He was in the game today. He had 2 targets, no catches. So I don't know. Yeah, you can't trust it until you see it. And we're in the fantasy playoffs at this point, so I'm not interested.
Right. Yeah. The only thing I would say is, like you said, Simon. In the deepest of leagues, if you have a bench spot, maybe throw Curtis Samuel on the bench. You can't start him. But if McLaurin's out for an extended period of time, he's the only guy that has any sort of explosiveness that, I would be interested in. But it would, outside of the most desperate situations, don't want much of anything.
Yep, I'm with you there. But I do think not just Terry McLaurin being out, but Logan Thomas being out as well. If it benefits anyone, it is Curtis Samuel, I think, in this offense, the way he's used or has been used, or we expect him to be used by this team. But it's an emergency flex start kind of guy. We are going to move on to our next game, another really close one. Man, we've talked about nothing but close games so far. The Chiefs taking down the Raiders barely by only 39 points, 48-9. The Chiefs ran away with this one. I think the Raiders, the past couple of years, have seemed to have some sort of spell over the Chiefs. They've had their number, and those days are gone. It seems like maybe the Raiders can only beat the
today
Chiefs.
It is.
The Raiders can only beat the Chiefs if the Chiefs are like clear runaway #1 Super Bowl favorites, and then the Raiders know how to beat them. But if they're not, it seems like they do not. Guys, the first player I want to talk about is JL's least favorite player, my favorite player, Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow has gone from that safe, low upside player, and he has changed tiers in my eyes going into these playoffs. He is no longer that wide receiver 3 that you're plugging in just hoping for 10 points. There is very, very real upside with him on top of that safety now as the primary target in this offense. We started the year, Brian Edwards, Henry Ruggs, Darren Waller.
Tried to tell JL that Renfrow was going to be a thing.
You think Renfrow at best is going to be the 4th best target in this offense. You know what? He is their primary target offensively. JL, you really should have known. But just to put it into context, going into this week, Hunter Renfrow found himself as the wide receiver 19 on the season. He is right in the wide receiver 2 mix, and that's with coming on stronger as this season has ended. Over the past 6 weeks, he's had at least 9 targets in all but 1 game and at least 17 PPR points in 5 out of 6 games as well. On the season, he only has fewer than 8 targets 4 times and fewer than 5 1 time. He's only had fewer than 5 targets 1 time, and he had 4 in that game. He is the epitome of a safe wide receiver. It doesn't get safer, but now what we're seeing is he has upside to be one of the top wide receiver options on the week if the touchdowns come his way. Hunter Renfrow's a almost must-start wide receiver 2 kind of player going into these fantasy playoffs. Like, unless you're loaded at the receiver position, he's in my lineups. Do you guys agree that he's kind of made this jump, Jay? Like, do you view it similarly, or is this just a good run for him?
I disagree because you said almost must start. He is a must start. Outside of, if you've got 2 wide receiver ones, he's somebody you're throwing in your lineup every single week. I could not agree more. Even a week, how many points did they score? Was it 9 points or something like that?
9 points.
He still had over 20 fantasy points. So yeah, side me up. If I have Hunter Renfrow, he's in my lineup every single week from here on out.
God, it was insane today. I think he got 14 targets, 13 receptions. And that's the other thing with him. When you look at his stat sheet, you go down and you look at a lot of people's stat sheet, 9 targets, maybe they're averaging 5 catches, 6 catches on those 9 targets. Hunter Renfrow, it's like 7, 8 catches off 9 targets every time. Like he's efficient with the targets he gets as well. Josh, are you in agreement with us here, or is he still kind of in that wide receiver 3 flex territory for you?
No, absolutely. He's a strong wide receiver too,
right?
With wide receiver 1 upside, like he can have,
especially in a PPR league.
Yeah,
especially in a PPR league.
We definitely need to make sure we're clarifying that.
I will say this: if Darren Waller's back, I think it takes away a little bit of that upside.
Yeah, for sure.
But the safety's still there, the floor's still there, and he's still a wide receiver 2 regardless. So,
right.
Yeah, he's a guy in your fantasy lineups for sure going forward.
That's my
What's
wife.
up, Megan? Welcome in. Hey. Glad to have you here. We like looking at Jay. She just had to tune in to see your face a little bit more, Jay. We like that's the only reason I get on here too, is so I can see Jay's face.
I understand. It happens.
Guys, on the other side of this ball, so they went down big. As I mentioned, they lost 48-9 in this game.
It's got to be
so
one of the biggest
as you can imagine, being down that big is not good for the running backs in this offense. And we saw it. Josh, is there any concern? Josh Jacobs seems like a slam dunk back going into the playoffs. People are excited about him. I'd said he's like a top 7 back for me going into the fantasy playoffs. Does this game worry you at all? Or was this just they got blown out and they could not run?
I think this is typically what we see out of Josh Jacobs. In games where they end up losing or they are in a negative game script, you typically see Josh Jacobs not as good of a fantasy option. He has gotten more pass catching work lately, which has kept his floor a lot higher for the most part. But when I'm looking at his matchups, he's playing Cleveland, Denver, Indianapolis. Cleveland and Denver, they're not going to necessarily put up the points in my mind. So, Josh Jacobs is still a guy that 95% of fantasy rosters are going to be starting in the fantasy playoffs.
Yep, I'm with you. Jay, anything to add there?
No, I completely agree.
Because we're going to move on to the other side of this ball. On the Kansas City side here, first of all, if you started the Kansas City defense, congratulations. That was really great.
Congrats on your win this week.
Yeah, good job. That was phenomenal. Unless your backs were Antonio Gibson and Josh Jacobs, in which case maybe you just needed that defense to get back in contention. But the main thing I wanted to talk about over here was we saw Derek Gore get just about the same number of carries as CEH. He had 1 less carry, 1 less target, and he was more efficient with those touches. I know there were concerns about CEH and whether he would retain his backfield to himself after he came back from injury. It wasn't Derek Gore we were worried about, but here's Derek Gore going on pace with him. Jay, do you think this was because they were up so big, they got the backup back involved? Or is Derek Gore a kind of guy that you think this is going to be a 1-2 punch and he might be a startable asset going into the fantasy playoff weeks?
I think that it's going to cap CEH's upside. I think, he did get 2 touchdowns. Darrell Williams also got a touchdown. So they were spreading the touchdowns around to everybody other than Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So it was not pretty for those guys, but I'm not too concerned for CEH. He's a middle of the road running back 2 who if he gets a touchdown or 2, you're going to have a good day. And has anybody ever seen Derek Gore and Frank Gore in the same room? Are we sure that's not him?
He just changed his first name.
Changed a different name. So
Now, here's what he did. He's got a fountain of youth. We know that about Frank Gore.
Right,
he has to have access to the fountain of youth.
He is the fountain of youth, actually.
He's been very careful with it his whole career, I think, just little bits so that he's still aging, but people aren't realizing it. I think he accidentally fell in. And got really, and so he had to change his name so people would know.
This checks out.
Right. They wouldn't know that he got way younger is what happened there. So
he sneezed and he lost his balance and fell right in. Yeah, I like it. Hard-hitting analysis.
That's my analysis on who Derek Gore is. Almost
smart,
positive of it. Guys, the other question I had on this side of the ball, or I guess there's 2. Josh, Do you have any concern for Travis Kelce? He's been unbelievably dominant this year, but kind of disappeared in this game. Is he still
and last week?
And last week, yeah, it's been 2 weeks in a row now. Do you have concern for him, or just some bad games from an elite tight end?
2 games, 3 catches, 27 yards, actually, the last 2 weeks. I'm not concerned in the slightest. Again, a game script thing. They got up early. They didn't need him as much to win the game. They relied on their running backs, and it made a lot of sense. They exploited the Raiders. So I'm not nervous for Travis Kelce. I'm not nervous for Tyreek Hill. I will say with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm fully bought in that it was a complete game script thing too, that Derek Gore, you got these carries because they were blowing out. They didn't need Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I would not be too concerned that Gore is going to take a significant amount of carries going forward.
Yeah, I'm with you. Guys, before we move on to the next question or the next thing about this game, Craig had a question for us. Going into the last 2 games, Superflex, IDP, PPR League, he is down 40 with Rodgers, Kyler, Higbee, and Devontae against Kupp and Isaiah Simmons. Who wins? Can Rodgers, Kyler, Higbee, and Devontae Adams outscore Kupp and Isaiah Simmons by 40 points?
So hey, let's just give Rodgers and Kyler 20 points each and cancel out that 40-point lead. So it's Higbee and Devontae against Kupp and Isaiah Simmons, and that's pretty close.
I'll give you
4-5% chance of winning this game.
Josh, you took the exact number I was going to say. I was going to say it's right around half, but if I had to bet, I would bet on the Kupp and Isaiah Simmons side. But the other thing you have going for you, we gave 20 to each of these guys. Rodgers and Kyler are the kind of player that can put up 40.
Yes.
Like truly. Yes. So, you know what? I'll give you an even 50-50 split, Craig, because of the upside with those quarterbacks.
I love it.
I love Craig more than you guys. I'm giving him a 60-40 chance to win. I think both Rodgers and Kyler are going to have big games.
Let's go.
My last question for you guys about this game. Is there any interest in the secondary receiving options here? So after Tyreek Hill, Josh Gordon, Mecole Hardman, Byron Pringle, do you guys have any interest in these guys as emergency flexes going into the playoffs? Or with the Chiefs, is it just a start your stud scenario?
I forgot Josh Gordon was on the Chiefs, to be honest with you.
He scored a touchdown today. But get the secondary options out of here.
Yeah. It's just like the Packers. I want no part of any secondary receivers for the Chiefs. And I'm legally obligated anytime I see Tyler Higbee, I have to say never Higbee. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Never Higbee. Except for tonight, because he's going to win with Higbee.
That's right.
Yeah, not because of Higbee, though.
It's because of Kyler and Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, of course.
Right.
Guys, we're going to move on to our next game. The Seattle Seahawks taking down the Houston Texans in this one.
Rashad Penny.
and they absolutely took them down, didn't they? The Seattle Seahawks came into this game as 9.5-point favorites, and wow, they covered that. The over-under was 41 points. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Jay hit my analysis on my head, just like laughing while saying Rashad Penny out loud. Like
what is fantasy football when Rashad Penny is leading teams to victories?
Oh God!
Well, we'll get into that in a second because I think he is a solid play here. But so the over under for this game was 41 points. They hit the over. It was 33-13, 46 points. On the Seahawks side of the ball, Russell Wilson looked good. It was good to see him have a good game, making some deep throws. I was actually impressed with Russell Wilson. Lockett had a good game, but DK Metcalf had another disappointing game. Real fast before we get to Rashad Penny. Are you starting Lockett over DK Metcalf right now? Jay, I'll ask you first. Because when you look at their stats lately, Lockett has been pretty fine, and DK Metcalf has not really been a guy you even want in your fantasy lineup. So
I think you have to. Like if you're in the playoffs, you got to do what gives you the best chance to win. Otherwise, you go home. And right now, Tyler Lockett's outperforming DK Metcalf. So yeah, you have to.
I was gonna say if you're not, I think you're stuck in some take clock right now. Like 1 week you can write it off. 2 weeks even, then you can go, okay, weird game scripts. When you get into this territory, 3-4 weeks in a row, that's a trend, and that's something you got to pay attention to. Lockett seems like the better option. He's always been like the really big upside option. Know what I mean? But now there's some more safety there. It seems like.
In a half-point PPR league, DK Metcalf hasn't scored over 10 points since week 8. Since week 8.
You got to be concerned for his dynasty value as well, because the rumors of Russell Wilson leaving, like if you have DK Metcalf on your dynasty rosters right now, you have to be concerned.
Yeah, and it's not a sell because he's so talented. Right. It's like you'd be selling low, but you're just crossing your fingers, I think, at this point.
So Craig saying 50% chance overall. It sounds like I will take it. And FanDuel saying, so you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance. Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't seen that movie in so long.
I love that movie so much.
Guys, I do want to real fast actually touch on Russell Wilson because, like I said, he had a pretty good game. He looked accurate. He looked the best he has all season. Well, since that finger injury, at least. Do we trust Russell Wilson as a quarterback in the fantasy playoffs? And let me just tell you, he's playing the Rams next week, the Bears in week 16, the Lions in week 17. I guess you can throw him out there. I think he's going to be better than most streaming options. So I think he's a top 12 quarterback.
Josh, you were right there with me. The names I mentioned earlier, whenever we were talking about Dak going into the playoffs, all of those guys are still ahead of us because I trust him more.
Yeah.
But he's in that next tier. You can't put him lower than like the Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrows. Like he's in that tier of quarterback now. After those guys that you definitely start. Russell Wilson, maybe you got a better option. Probably not. So you can still roll him out there.
How about you, Jay? What do you think about that?
Superflex absolutely must start. I think for the most part in one QB leagues, you're starting him. You know, he is that back end QB1. Like when you get to talking like the Dak Prescotts, the Jalen Hurts, the Aaron Rodgers, if you wind up with two of those guys on your roster, you might have to, you know, there's definitely some rosters out there that have both Matthew Stafford and Russell Wilson. Like, and I'm starting Stafford 100 times out of 100. So he's not necessarily a lock, but I'd say in about 80% of leagues, you're starting Russell Wilson.
Also, guys,
probably a little higher than that.
Seems like we're on the same page there.
I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware we were going on. There are two games from this slate going into overtime. The Cincinnati game is currently in overtime. San Francisco, Cincinnati. Cincinnati has kicked a field goal to go up by 3, but San Francisco has the ball. And then Buffalo, Tampa Bay tied 27-27, about to go into overtime.
Buffalo came back?
Buffalo came back.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great game.
Wow.
So, guys, Rashad Penny. Great game. He got the majority of the running back carries. He's the number one waiver pickup, I think, going into the fantasy playoffs right now. I can't think of a guy that I would pick over him. 16 carries, 137 yards, 2 big plays. He looked good. He looks like the most talented running back that they have right now. So everyone's got to go pick him up.
All right, Josh, I got a question. I got a question.
I'm still going to groan about it.
Next week.
You're right.
Yeah.
Playoffs. Rashad Penny or Zeke?
So the Rashad Penny's playing the Rams next week, or Zeke
playing the Giants.
Zeke, come on.
You know there are going to be some decisions. Like, I don't want to be locked into this the rest of the week, but right now my gut's telling me Rashad Penny.
You know what?
Holy cow!
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you.
I cannot do it. I cannot do it. But I get it.
I say that. I don't think I can actually make the move and do it on my team.
He got 16 carries. Alex Collin got the next most with 7 carries, but he was super inefficient. He didn't look good. And then the next after that was DJ Dallas with 2 carries. He's going to get a lot of carries next week. They're playing the Rams. I think they're going to be close in my rankings when it comes down to it. But right now, my gut's telling me Rashad Penny.
God, Rashad Penny, what if this was his breakout game and all of a sudden he's the guy we thought he was when he was drafted and he literally waited until every dynasty manager roster and him like made the decision to drop him this year. Like this was the year he got dropped. Penny. Oh, don't do that. That would be so 2021 to have league winner Rashad Penny. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine the rosters with Rashad Penny, Cordell Patterson as their 2 running backs winning a fantasy championship?
Oh God, that's ridiculous. It's so crazy. And then throwing James Conner with them. But anyway, on the Texans side of the ball, Davis Mills was efficient. But guys, if we're being honest, this team is a complete mess. All in all, offense, defense. Brandon Cook, he continues to look like pretty much the only option that you can have any faith in whatsoever starting in fantasy. But when it comes down to it, he got 11 targets, 8 receptions, 101 yards. He's a good wide receiver, guys. He's a back-end wide receiver too, so he's got to still be in your fantasy lineups. He's the only one, right? Right, Simon?
I don't think he's got to be, but you can still start him each and every week. Like I'll start Hunter Renfrow over Brandon Cooks.
We just said he's almost a wide receiver one, Hunter
You're
Renfrow.
Right, you're right.
Obviously not him. But how about real fast? How about, DK Metcalf? We're starting Brandon Cooks over DK Metcalf at this point?
Probably. But that hurts.
I don't think it's the right decision. I
would have to do it at this point. What
about Hollywood Brown if Lamar Jackson does not play? Marquise Brown without Lamar.
Without Lamar, definitely Brandon Cooks for me.
What about Jarvis Landry?
Brandon Cooks.
I'm going Landry.
You're going Landry.
So it sounds like Jay's a little bit lower in Brandon Cooks overall, but
it's not Cooks. It's Davis Mills. It's the quarterback situation.
He was efficient today, though. He looked pretty solid. I mean, Davis Mills completed 33 passes, 49 attempts, 331 yards, and a touchdown, no interceptions. He was pretty accurate, and he likes to throw it to Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
Is there a team? Is there a team in the NFL with fewer fantasy options than the Houston Texans? One. They
the
have
Jaguars have only James Robinson, and do we even have that anymore? It is.
I think I'd rather start like Marvin Jones or DJ Chark over anybody else not named Brandon Cooks on this Texans roster.
That's true. That's true. But Brandon
Nico Collins has played like he's not somebody you can trust, but he's come on as of late. Deep leagues,
dynasty
play. Yeah, dynasty. I like Nico Collins.
I like his upside going forward. But honestly, that's all I think we could take away from this game when it comes down to it. Start Brandon Cooks. Forget about everyone else.
Also, JL saying I started Penny in a league. You know what?
You did?
Sorry but you nailed it. It worked out. Nice job, JL.
Love that.
Cool.
That's all I had here. Start Brandon Cooks. Forget about everyone else.
When the Texans are involved, there's not usually much to talk about on that side of the ball. And we're going to move to another game where maybe there's a team where there's not as much to talk about from a fantasy perspective. Jay alluded to it, but the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Tennessee Titans, and the Titans won this game 20-0. The Jaguars skunked by the Titans in this one.
Well, Urban Meyer apparently didn't hear my rant from last week because he did the exact same thing. Didn't bench him because of a fumble, but before we came on, I saw Mike Clay tweet this out. James Robinson played in 61% of snaps, finished with 6 carries for 4 yards.
Ew.
What?
Ew.
We were talking about before we started. Is Urban Meyer trying to get fired? Like, that's the only thing that makes any sense with his usage of James Robinson. It just absolutely.
He was so underused that I think Number Fire purposely didn't put him up there just to like save Urban the embarrassment. Like I don't even.
No, he didn't have enough fantasy points.
Yeah, they were just like, nope, we're not like we're just gonna like give Urban Meyer a pass here and pretend like he just wasn't even there.
Well, and this is the thing. Like, I was out on James Robinson because he was a volume play last year, and then I bought in midseason because he was getting the volume, and then the volume has just disappeared. You cannot trust James Robinson right now, as much as it hurts me to say. It's not because of him. It's because of the dysfunction in this franchise, because of Urban Meyer. There's been, reports coming out that the players are starting to turn on him. So I guess even though it's just you and I right now, Josh, we're going to do here, Simon. I'm going to go to another game with James Robinson.
I want to play a game.
Let's see. So James Robinson, or I think we already hit this, but I'm going to do it again. Ezekiel Elliott.
Zeke.
Yeah, it's got to be Zeke. James Robinson or Myles Gaskin.
Gaskin.
Got a good one for you. This plays against the Detroit Lions if he's active next week. James Robinson or Chase Edmonds?
Oh, no.
I'll go Robinson.
I would like to see what Chase. We're going to get to see Chase Edmonds tomorrow night.
Likely. He's not 100% going to be active.
Yeah.
And James Robinson does get the Houston Texans next week, so he does have a good matchup.
I'm going to want to see across the week like how they're talking about the situation and how sad they are that James Robinson's not involved at all. But I'm probably going to be going with James Robinson here.
All right, we got 2 more. James Robinson. Okay.
A quick update. Albert said Ayuk game-winning touchdown, which Josh, That is also good for you and I in the AFC North, as there is a fight to the finish in that division to see who comes out on top. It is now a 3-horse race, it seems like, between the Bengals, Browns, and Ravens. And that game makes it just a little bit
The Steelers
closer.
are part of this race.
You know what? The Steelers are part of it too. I guess I shouldn't
Yes,
count
they
them
are.
out. And Brian said, really, Cincy? Come on.
Geez.
Sorry, Jay, who was the next name in your name game?
Chuba Hubbard.
James Robinson.
That offense is bad too.
Yeah. All right, I got one more for you. It's a guy we talked about earlier, Melvin Gordon.
Yeah. No hesitation there. Not even
as long as he's healthy.
Hesitation.
As long as he's healthy.
Right. Yeah. Of course. But yeah, it's James Robinson. Honestly, is the only guy you could even consider starting on the Jacksonville team. You're not starting Trevor Lawrence. You're not starting any of the wide receivers. Rest in peace, Laviska Shenault Jr.'s value for this year. I know. I admit it. I was wrong, but it was more about Urban Meyer. But that's here nor there. That's really, unless you guys have anything else to talk about on the Jacksonville side, there's nothing. Like
just
until
move on, please.
Yeah, it's sad. On the Titans side of the ball, Ryan Tannehill. Again, let me ask you this: Ryan Tannehill or Trevor Lawrence?
Ryan Tannehill.
He only had 191 yards, no touchdowns, 29 yards. He did have a rushing touchdown, and that's where the difference is for me as well. There was a little concern for Dontrell Hilliard's fantasy value with Jeremy McNichols coming back, and it did play a factor. McNichols got 8 carries. Dontrell Hilliard got 6 carries. Donta Foreman got 13 carries and the touchdown. So it looks like it's going to be a full-blown committee. For me, Donta Foreman is the guy that you're going to start if you have to start somebody out of this backfield. Simon, what do you think?
Yeah, it's down to Foreman if you have to start someone out of this backfield. It wasn't what I thought was going to happen when Henry went down, but it seems like that's what's going to happen going forward. So Foreman, but I'm not excited about it. But he's a startable running back.
Josh?
It's absolutely Foreman. I mean, you can't even consider starting the other 2 options at this point. It seems like Hilliard and McNichols are going to eat into each other, and Foreman's the goal line back. So if this team's getting in the red zone, yeah, Foreman's a fine start still. I feel comfortable with him in my lineup.
Now, Julio Jones came back from injury. AJ Brown is still out at least one more week. Granted, it could have been game script, but he didn't have that great of a game. He had 6 targets, but 4 catches for 33 yards. Josh, we'll start with you. Are you comfortable starting Julio Jones for the fantasy playoffs?
Not at all. Not at all. Not comfortable at all. He's going to have upside. He got, like 6 targets, like you said, 4 catches. They didn't really need much of a passing game in this game. Like you said, it could have been part of the game script, but he's an emergency flex.
Simon?
That's it.
Yeah, I'm about there with you. I don't expect them. I expect better games going forward from Julio because I don't expect this kind of game script from the Titans over the last couple of games. I think the Jaguars are one of only maybe 2 or 3 teams in the NFL the Titans are capable of doing this to regularly without some weird fluke game happening. So they should be in closer games on the stretch or games where they're trailing quite a bit, and Julio will be better in those games. But maybe slightly above where Josh had him, but not much.
I know you guys haven't been in on him as much as I have, so I'll ask you this one. Julio Jones or Jarvis Landry?
Jarvis Landry.
Tampa Bay just won, too.
Tampa Bay.
How'd they do it?
Touchdown.
They scored more points.
Wow. Is that how this works?
Yeah. It happened in overtime.
Perryman got a 58-yard touchdown.
I thought you were about to say Rashad Penny. I'm like, man, Rashad Penny had such a good day that he's winning games for the Buccaneers too.
He was like, hey,
that's awesome.
I'm feeling good today. Let me get in there, Tom.
And before we move on, I will say this isn't fantasy related, but Derrick Henry could be back before the start of the playoffs. How incredible is that for this team? If they're able to sneak into the playoffs, if they get Derrick Henry back, AJ Brown, the Titans could make some noise.
It would be a completely different team heading into the playoffs than what we've seen the past couple weeks since Henry's gone down, Brown has been out. That would be fun. That would throw a real wrench into what was going on in the playoffs because they are a not a kind of better team with those two players. They are an entirely different team with those two players.
Yep, absolutely.
So that would be fun. Guys, we're going to move on to our next game. And I have another close one here. The New Orleans Saints taking down the New York Jets 30-9. So they got the W in this one over the Jets.
A lot of close games this week.
A lot of close games. Seems like there were close games and blowouts and not much in between here. But the first player I wanted to talk about, I know there were concerns about Taysom Hill. He didn't necessarily look fantastic, but he had a really good fantasy day. 15 for 21, 175 yards, within 73 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So I wanted to play a little bit of a name game where I'm trying to figure out where that comfort level is for Taysom Hill going into the playoffs, because he's got this kind of rushing upside. It doesn't matter if he throws for 100 yards. He can get 70 plus yards on the ground and a couple touchdowns each week. So let's start with some names we've already talked about. Russell Wilson or Taysom Hill in your fantasy playoffs?
That's a good one.
Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill, is it the rushing upside, Josh? You just like that floor from him?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what I've seen. I mean, that's what makes his fantasy value. He looks really good as a runner. They set up runs for him to be the guy. 11 carries, 73 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. I feel very comfortable with this.
Yeah. Jay, what about you? Russell Wilson or Taysom Hill?
I can't believe I'm saying it, but yeah, it's Taysom Hill. He's got the floor with the floor and the upside with the rushing, and he's proven the past 3 weeks he can do it. Even when the game is ugly, when he doesn't play good from an actual football perspective, he's still putting up fantasy numbers. I will say, tough matchup next week against the Rams for Russell Wilson at the Rams, and we've seen in the past divisional games late in the season, Russell Wilson kind of disappears. So yeah, there's no doubt in my mind I'd go Taysom.
Now, the Taysom's playoff schedule, maybe this changes it. He goes up against the Buccaneers, who are 14th against opposing quarterbacks. The Dolphins, 13th against opposing quarterbacks. And then Panthers, who are 5th against opposing quarterbacks. So I know the Panthers were better at the beginning of the season, but that is not an easy schedule. The worst team against quarterbacks that he's going up against in these playoffs is the Buccaneers, who are still a top half defense against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy football. So one more name I'll throw out there. This is another guy ranked similarly. Taysom Hill or Matthew Stafford going into your fantasy playoffs?
Stafford. No question.
Okay. I think we found exactly where that line is. He's a back end QB1, and you're probably starting him if you picked him up. He's
right there behind Dak. We talked about Dak earlier. He's like the next quarterback you mentioned after Dak in my mind.
I'll be honest. Yep. I'm starting Taysom over Dak until I see Dak play better.
And I think that's fair. That's super fair. That's super duper fair.
Yeah. Guys, the New Orleans Saints, we talk about these teams where we don't have a lot to talk about from a fantasy perspective. Once we get outside these quarterbacks, there's really only one other player we're talking about, and we don't have to say much. That's Alvin Kamara.
Tony Jones. Oh, sorry.
Nope. Alvin Kamara, play him. Alvin Kamara, play him. Alvin Kamara, play him. Tony Jones, you can pick up as your backup going into the playoffs if you need to, but I don't think there's a single other player here that we need to talk about from a fantasy perspective. Nope. Josh, is there anyone you think needs to be discussed?
No. Like Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill. It's the Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill show.
That's it. But you know what? I like that show for fantasy. That's a pretty good fantasy show, Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. On the Jets side of the ball, the question I have written down. So we said there's not much on the Saints that you would talk about from a fantasy perspective.
Is there anything at all you want to talk
Michael
about?
Carter and Elijah Moore injured and Zach Wilson under center, is there a single player on the Jets you will start in the fantasy playoffs? Any of them?
Absolutely not.
Nope.
No one. Yeah, you can't trust any of these running backs. You can't trust any of the receiving options with Zach Wilson under center. The only two players you could trust were Michael Carter and Elijah Moore, and they're gone. They're injured. I truly don't think going into the fantasy playoffs that you should have any Jets in your lineup. Not a single one. Honestly, even in 2 quarterback leagues, I'd be trying to avoid starting Zach Wilson if possible. It's really rough for fancy.
Now the Saints do have a good defense. Got to mention that they were going up against a good defense here, but your point still stands. Nothing changes because of that. I don't trust any of these guys.
Yeah, I guess their kicker maybe you could plug in. But
I don't play with kickers, so.
Well, some leagues play with kickers, Jay. It's not all about you. But guys, we are going to – you're right. I forgot. Guys, we are going to move on to our next game, the last 1 p.m. game, the Atlanta Falcons versus the Carolina Panthers. Atlanta pulled this one out 29-21.
Yes, they absolutely did. Yes, they absolutely did. And Atlanta came into this game as 2.5-point underdogs. The Panthers, again, were favored by 2.5 points, and the over-under was 42.5. They hit for scoring 50 points total. The Falcons, on their offense, we saw more or less what we've seen from their offense all season, right? Cordell Patterson has been a consistent option, and everyone else just has such a low ceiling. Some of these guys have solid floors, like Russell Gage. He had another fine game. If you plugged him in, he didn't absolutely kill you. Kyle Pitts, again, a fine game at the tight end position. Didn't kill you, but you're starting Cordell Patterson. But is there anyone else in this offense we really want to start? Mike Davis did a little bit of something, but I know Carolina has a solid defense. You'd think if Atlanta scored 29 points on Matt Ryan and this offense, there'd be points somewhere, right, Jay? But outside of Cordell Patterson, anyone?
I think you have to start Kyle Pitts. He's not putting up huge numbers, but in the tight end landscape, if you're telling me you can get practically double digits guaranteed from the tight end position, good game if he gets a touchdown. So I think Kyle Pitts, outside of teams that have the Travis Kelce's, the Mark Andrews, stuff like that, which the draft capital you had to spend on Kyle Pitts in the offseason to get him, it's not very likely that you have both of those guys on your team.
He's a bust.
So, he is where he was going. 100% is. And I still do like Russell Gage from a volume perspective. I do think that he's more of he's an emergency flex play. But if I had to pick one player other than Cordell Patterson to play on the Falcons, it would probably be Russell Gage.
I agree with you. I guess it would be Russell Gage. He gets enough targets. But in terms of Kyle Pitts, so, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Rob Gronkowski, Mark Andrews, we're starting those guys. And then it kind of creates another tier. Is he part of this tier of Darren Waller when he's healthy? You'd rather start Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox is in like a separate tier, right, from Kyle Pitts. Like,
I believe the legal term is glob when you're talking about tight ends.
No, but Kyle Pitts goes into the glob, because Dawson Knox has separated himself from Kyle Pitts at this point for me.
Freiermuth or Pitts?
Freiermuth.
Ertz or Pitts?
Pitts. But they're in a tier.
Those are the names we're talking about.
Freiermuth. Yeah, he's in a tier with these guys. When I say Pitts, I'm not saying it confidently.
Glob.
I'm just saying he's part of that glob now. He's part of that
glob of the tight end glob.
Yeah,
that you're basically praying for a touchdown. Is he at the top of it though?
Yeah, you are praying for a touchdown, but he only has one touchdown all the season. That's what I'm saying. That's the crazy part. Yeah. But he does
for
provide
a rookie tight end
floor.
That's the
from
thing.
the tight end position.
If you've got a lot of upside in the rest of your team, and you're just needing a solid contribution from your tight end, you're happy with Kyle Pitts getting the double digits, but you're not happy with what you had to spend to draft him.
Absolutely. He's a bust. He's the bust. Atlanta did win this ball, but like I said, not a lot of production. We're starting Cordell Patterson. You got to feel iffy about the other guys. Yeah, Kyle Pitts is probably still a tight end that's starting, though. On the Panthers side of the ball, oh my Lord, Cam Newton was taken out of the game in the fourth quarter, and PJ Walker came in, right? Matt Rule said that Cam Newton is still the starter going forward, but can we have any confidence in him as a streamer if he can be pulled this easily? I mean, he has the rushing upside, which makes us want to put him in our fantasy lineups as, fantasy managers, but I'm not doing it in the fantasy playoffs, right, guys? Simon?
No. Yeah, you can't do it. I'm really disappointed. I thought Cam Newton was going to be a guy that you could plug in rest of season with that rushing floor, kind of like we're talking about Taysom Hill, but he's not. That you can't trust him at all. If you have to, you can throw him in as an emergency quarterback start, but zero confidence, absolutely zero.
Same thing, Jay?
Yeah, I completely agree. When everybody was hyping him up, I was somewhat timid on the situation just because he did look so bad at the end of the season last year with the Patriots. Now, you could have chalked it up to a lot of things, coming back from COVID. There are some lingering effects and stuff like that, but nobody signed him this offseason, and it looks like that's the reason. The only reason the Panthers did was they were absolutely desperate. Outside of the most extreme circumstances, you cannot trust Cam Newton because you can't trust him to even finish the game. You're hoping for some rushing production. You're hoping for a touchdown on the ground, and that's pretty much all you're going to get.
I was on the opposite side. When he came in, I'll own it. I said he was a top 10 guy rest of the season because of that rushing floor. But it's not there. I've changed my
To be
team.
fair, Christian McCaffrey was also healthy when you said that. So, you know, things change. Christian McCaffrey being out definitely changes things because Chuba Hubbard and Amir Abdullah are not Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Cam Newton's playing Buffalo, Tampa Bay, and New Orleans Saints the next 3 weeks.
Nope.
He's not going to be in my fantasy lineups.
He's droppable.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
With that lineup, with that, like even in super flex leagues, like.
How about the running backs? Chuba Hubbard did score a touchdown, but only got 10 carries for 33 yards. You know, the Panthers were down, but you'd think they'd still be able to get some running game going. The running backs, can we feel good about those guys? No, right?
Nope.
And that's why I wasn't as bullish on Chuba Hubbard this go round. You know, he was getting all the work and didn't have Cam Newton on the team. Now Cam Newton stealing the rushing touchdowns. You got Abdullah stealing the passing work. You can't trust either one of these guys.
I don't. How about Robbie Anderson, who had pretty much his best game of the season, right? This past week, just today, having 12 targets, 7 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. I'll tell you guys real fast. I'm not trusting this at all. Jay,
no. And DJ Moore got banged up. I don't know how serious it was or how much time he missed. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, even if DJ Moore was out the rest of the game and that's when it happened, no chance I'm trusting Robbie Anderson.
I can shortcut all. If you're asking if I'm going to trust these players, the answer to every single player on the Carolina Panthers is no. No, I do not trust. I mean, it depends your definition of trust. Like I viewed him as a wide receiver 1. Do I trust I'm going to get that kind of production from him? Absolutely not. He can probably get you wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 production in the
You're starting Renfrow over him, right?
I'm starting Renfrow over DJ Moore. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's probably an easy one.
Yeah, honestly, you're happy if you get wide receiver 2 value out of DJ Moore right now. Like that, you're ecstatic. Like the way
he's got a safe floor. He's going to get a lot of targets as long as he's healthy. But yeah, his upside's really limited. So if DJ Moore's not in there, I guess Robbie Anderson is a fine start. He's going to be a wide receiver 3 for me. So there's that. But outside of that, that's really all you got going on with the Panthers offense.
You guys, we're going to move on to our first 4 p.m. game, the Detroit Lions versus the Denver Broncos in this one. And the Broncos ran away with this one, beating the now 1-10-1 Lions, the no longer winless Lions 38-10.
Yeah, like we were talking about this whole day, for some reason, decided it wanted to be blowouts and close games. And this was another one that was a blowout. But our guy, even though Melvin Gordon got 24 rushes, 111 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, Javonte Williams looked good as well. 73 yards. He had a touchdown, added in a catch. These guys are both 4 touchdown. I mean, he had what? Yeah, 4 touchdown, 2 targets. Are both Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams must starts for the rest of the season?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they have to be.
Yeah,
that's how Denver wants to operate this offense. It looks like they've got 2 excellent running backs, and they can both find fantasy success. Now, will it be both of them greater than 20 points a game rest of season? No. They were going up with like one of the best matchups for running backs going against the Detroit Lions. So they were both able to eat in a game that they were up big against a horrible run defense. But you have to start both of these guys.
Yeah, and people were just like I've said it a couple times. People were just expecting Melvin Gordon to just go away into retirement and just fall off the face of the earth. And he's been extremely productive, and he's going to continue to be. And I can't wait to see Twitter's reaction when Melvin Gordon re-signs with the Broncos and Javonte Williams RB1 season just doesn't happen, because it makes sense from a football perspective. It's going to happen. Justin, our friend Justin Wright from 14P, has been saying it, and I agree with him. I think Gordon's going to come back because they make a really good 1-2 punch. It's not what we want from a fantasy perspective, but it makes sense for the Broncos, especially when they have Aaron Rodgers under center. But speaking of quarterbacks, Teddy Bridgewater did Teddy Bridgewater things, threw for less than 200 yards, but he did get 2 touchdowns, 1 to Albert O and 1 to Javonte, like we said. I got to say, I thought Jerry Jeudy was a buy low. He is still getting the most targets on this team, but the passing game just hasn't done much of anything. Is there a wide receiver on the Denver Broncos offense that you're comfortable starting in the playoffs? Simon, we'll start with you.
You got the word comfortable. Like, I'm
this
not starting
game,
any of these guys.
this team wants to run through Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, similar to we talked about the Browns. It really caps the upside for any of these receiving options here. And you don't love the quarterback situation. Teddy Bridgewater's fine. It's good enough, but you're not excited about him tossing the ball to these guys, and that's probably a big reason they've committed to the run like they have. There's just no upside with these wide receivers.
Yeah.
Get him out of here.
I'm with you. The only guy I would consider is Jerry Jeudy because he's leading in targets, but other than that, you can't. I did bury the lead of the man, the myth, the legend, as JL loves to hear, Craig Reynolds. Now, that definitely sounds like a Madden creative player. He led the Lions in rushing with 11 rushes, 83 yards. He had 2 catches for 16 yards. He was basically the last man standing with both DeAndre Swift out. There's rumors that Swift could go on IR. Jamal Williams had COVID, so who knows if he's going to be back next week. Goes up against Arizona. Is he somebody you would consider starting in a situation if you don't have a running back to, or let's say James Robinson or Craig Reynolds next week? Both Swift, let's say Swift and Williams are out. James Robinson or Craig Reynolds?
James Robinson.
Couldn't do it. Yeah, James Robinson.
Yeah, I'm with you guys too.
If this was the Chiefs or if this was the Bills and we were given this opportunity, yeah, maybe. But like a player I don't trust and an offense I don't trust with no other playmakers, I'll take James Robinson and Urban Meyer over. I've got
absolutely zero interest in starting Craig Reynolds, but Jared Goff, just another mediocre game, 215 yards, a touchdown, interception. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god, 12 targets, 8 catches, 73 yards, didn't have a touchdown. But from a PPR perspective, you have to be at least somewhat excited with the 12 targets again. It looked like when Josh Reynolds signed with the team that connection from LA was stirring up. But here recently, St. Brown has been the one who's been connecting with Jared Goff. Is you any interest at all in starting Amon-Ra St. Brown?
I think you can.
He's getting enough targets, but he's playing Arizona next week. Probably not going to actually want to. It's a desperation play.
Yeah, I'm with Josh. 100% with Josh on that one.
Yeah, that's pretty much not a whole lot of fantasy talk with this one, especially, TJ Hawkinson didn't play, so it would have been one of the biggest
things
the
Lions
to talk
and Broncos, yeah. We know what these offenses are. Javonte Williams, that's the lead right there.
Yep, exactly.
Guys, we're going to move on to the Los Angeles Chargers versus New York Giants game. The Chargers coming out on top 37-21. On the Chargers side of the ball, we were without Keenan Allen this week, but Mike Williams was able to play 6 receptions for 61 yards. But he was not the player with the highest fantasy points on this team at the wide receiver position. That was Jalen Guyton. But guys, we're still looking at, you're still viewing Mike Williams over Guyton the rest of the season, right? This isn't he just got the touchdown.
Oh yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure we were good there because I know Mike Williams has been disappointing as of late compared to his beginning of the season start, but he's still a guy you can plug in each week. Now, Austin Eckler did get injured during this game. There was an injury, so we need to keep an eye on that. As far as the backups here go, outside of Austin Eckler, though, we saw Joshua Kelly get 10 carries, Justin Jackson with 9 carries. Do you guys have interest in either of these guys? Let's say Austin Eckler is going to miss time in the fantasy playoffs. We just need to watch this news. Josh, which of these two backs, if either, would you have more interest in starting instead of Austin Eckler?
When it comes down to it, it's probably Justin Jackson. It just seems like he's got a little bit more pass catching upside as well when it comes down to it. And I don't know. He seems like the backup, but when it comes down to it, I'm going to try not to rely on either one of these guys if I can help it, right? Maybe you're desperate, you throw one of them out there, but they're going to split the workload. It's not going to be one takes the Austin Eckler role if Austin Eckler can't go.
Jay, would it be Chuba Hubbard or one of these guys if Eckler misses time?
Ooh. With the matchups that the Panthers have, I would go with Jackson. Pretty much I agree with everything that Josh said. And we saw this last year when Eckler went down. Both of these guys had an opportunity. Jackson's the one that performed the best. It wasn't anything, phenomenal, but he got the pass catching work, which put him over the top.
Yep. On the New York Giants side of this ball,
just skip it.
Mike Glennon, there was questions about if he'd play. He was cleared to play, and he had himself a decent game. Only 191 passing yards, but 2 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. How do you guys view Mike Glennon if he's going to continue starting? Mike Glennon or Cam Newton rest of season?
I'll take the upside on Cam Newton.
Jay's got the stink face. He says, no, I'll quit playing fantasy. But outside of Mike Glennon, guys, there's really only one player on the Giants we need to talk about, and that is Saquon Barkley. You're going to start Saquon Barkley each and every single week. This was nice to see a decent game out of him. I know it's been disappointing as of late, but adjust your expectations. Don't view him as a locked and loaded top 5 running back, but he can give you top end RB2, back end RB1 value each and every week, and you're happy with that. Josh, the receiving options here. It's a bit of a mess with the Giants when it comes to their receiving options, their passing game in
general. You could have just said just with the Giants. You could just ended the sentence there.
It's a mess. Are there any of these options that you're trusting or that you are starting in your playoffs?
Not at all. Not at all.
Not a single one. Jay, what about you? Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard? Are you cool?
The only one I would even consider would be Sterling Shepard from a volume standpoint, and that's only if Daniel Jones comes back. I don't know how much longer he's going to be out. There's room, could be the rest of the year. He's dealing with a neck injury. So yeah, Sterling Shepard would be the only one I would consider, only if Daniel Jones back and only in the most desperate situations.
I'm with you guys there. Not too much else to say on that game, guys. We're going to move on to the first of the 2 overtime games that wrapped up while we were streaming today. The 49ers coming out on top 26-23 in this game in overtime off a Brandon Ayuk game-winning touchdown.
What a game. What a game. The San Francisco 49ers, they came into the game as 2.5-point favorites. The Bengals were 2.5-point underdogs. The over-under was 48.5 points on the FanDuel Sportsbook. And man, how close was it? 49 points. They just hit the over.
And the 49ers won by 3 on a 2.5-point line. That is that's pretty awesome as well.
No,
those lines are pretty good.
Yeah, they know how to set pretty good lines over there.
Good sweat. I bet some people had some real good sweats going down the wire.
Oh yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo had a solid game, but I don't know if he's ever going to be a consistent fantasy option. You're really disappointed when you look at Jeff Wilson getting all the running back carries, 13 carries, but only 56 yards. Michael Hasty did get the pass catching work a little bit more, 3 catches for 10 yards. So you were really disappointed if you started either one of the 49ers running backs. Brandon Ayuk got that game-winning touchdown. Like we said, Deebo Samuel came back. He got 8 carries. So he was kind of...
You said 2 running backs, but there's a third running back on this team.
Yeah, there absolutely is. There absolutely is. We're starting Deebo Samuel with a lot of confidence going forward, right, guys?
I will say, too, before you move on and Jimmy Garoppolo, he hasn't put up amazing numbers, but he has a really good schedule down the stretch for the playoffs. The Falcons, the Titans, and the Texans. So
you trust him?
Yeah, not trusting him, no. But in a Superflex league, if you lost Lamar Jackson or if your number 2 was Cam Newton, I'd start Jimmy G, obviously over Lamar, but he's somebody that could potentially step in and have at least decent numbers with the matchups.
I like it. So Brandon Ayuk, he had the game-winning touchdown, but without that game-winning touchdown, you're a little bit disappointed with his performance. So, a lot of teams are probably still going to play him, but he's a wide receiver 3 for me still. Does that make sense? Yeah, I saw some head nodding.
Yeah, he's a boom-bust wide receiver 3. He's going to have big weeks. He's going to let you down.
Yeah. George Kittle, tight end 1, rest of the fantasy season. Disagree with me. I dare you. I dare either one of you. I dare you, Simon. I dare you. Try it.
I want to say it's Travis Kelce, but with the way George Kittle's playing in this offense right now, you got to go with George Kittle. But they're a tier. It's George Kittle and Travis Kelce.
Sure.
But
if you had both, which no one does, but you have both, which one if you had to pick?
I'm starting both if I have both.
Next week, who you starting? Just one.
It's a one-player league, Simon. You have to pick one.
Do it. I'm making you say it. Yes. I
George
just wanted to hear it. All right. I just needed to hear Simon say it.
I can't believe that might be the first time ever on camera I have ever picked a tight end over Travis Kelce for anything. And I think that includes when he's on bye. This is probably the first time I've picked someone.
Got to
over
make
him.
it clear, not trying to talk crap about Travis Kelce in any way. I think he's still a fantastic start going forward.
Yeah, an elite
I think
start.
it's just a way to show how dominant George Kittle is right now. Right.
Yep.
On the Bengals side of the ball, Joe Burrow looked pretty solid. He completed 25 passes, 348 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon was very disappointing, but he came into this game with an illness, and I think Samaje Perine was on the field more due to that illness. Joe Mixon, again, you're feeling very good about. I'm not even going to ask you guys. He's in your fantasy lineups going forward. He's still a top 5 running back the rest of the season.
What was it they were saying during the broadcast? He was going on a streak of 9 straight games with a touchdown going into this week, or something ridiculous like that. Like this was the one that would have tied the franchise record if he would have gotten in the end zone again. But yeah, you trust you have supreme trust in Joe Mixon.
Yep, 9 straight games with the touchdown. You're absolutely correct.
Wow.
Jamar Chase got 2 touchdowns. It's nice
Welcome
to
back.
see a Jamar Chase showing here, boys. So T. Higgins had a fine game. He's getting 114 yards on 5 catches. Both of these guys are high-end wide receiver 2s for me. Still going forward, like the tippity top of that wide receiver 2s. Do you guys agree, Simon?
Yep, and Jamar Chase has the kind of upside where he could be the number 1 overall wide receiver on any given week. Like That's the kind of player he is. He's a solid top-end wide receiver 2 with not just wide receiver 1 upside, but number 1 overall wide receiver upside.
Right there with you.
I completely agree. Yep, Higgins, they're both high-end wide receiver 2s. Higgins is a little safer, but he doesn't have the upside that Chase does.
I am right there with you. If I only had to choose one, much like the Travis Kelce, George Kittle question, I'm still going with Jamar Chase, but it's super close. Super close. That's it for this game, though.
That is it for this game, guys. We are going to move on to our last game. The Buffalo Bills versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay coming out on top 33-27 in this one.
So I just looked, and between the two of Tom Brady and Josh Allen, they had 100 pass attempts in this game. Josh Allen had 54. Tom Brady had 46. 100 pass attempts in this game. And Fournette still had almost 20 rushes as well. But on the Buffalo Bills side of the ball, you definitely have to feel a lot better the way that they started out this game. And then you really can't take much away from the Monday Night Football game last week, although Josh Allen still has an arm to be able to throw those balls in that 50-mile-an-hour wind. So give him some credit. Over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception. Also 12 rushes, 109 yards on the ground, and a rushing touchdown. Do you guys disagree at all that there's not a single running back on the Buffalo Bills that you're starting in any circumstance?
I'm with you.
I mean, Devin Singletary did get 6 catches, 7 targets, which is nice to see, but they were kind of down in this game, and that's
right. And how often are they going to throw 54 times as well?
Yeah, I mean, they only had 7 rushing attempts in this game. Well, Josh Allen obviously had his. Right. He was the running back 1 in this game, right? Or the running back 1 for his team. Devin Singletary, if you're really desperate, he's the one I'm going to throw out there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think because of the PPR upside, but definitely not somebody you feel comfortable starting.
No.
Even in a game that 54 passes were attempted, 36 completions, Stephon Diggs only had 7 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown. I know you guys are, I've been big on Stephon Diggs too, but he really hasn't put up wide receiver 1 numbers a ton this year. Rest of the season, Stephon Diggs is a top wide receiver, and Simon, we'll go with you first.
That's tough. I think he's in that T. Higgins, Jamar Chase range. He's a top end wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside week in, week out. You're probably still starting him if you've got him, but yeah, it's disappointing. We were hoping for another top 5 wide receiver season, and while he's got that upside, it's not what you expect from him each week.
All right, Josh.
Yes, I mean, he's probably the number 12 wide receiver right there next to Jamar Chase. I mean, Deebo Samuel or Stephon Diggs. I'll go with Deebo Samuel myself.
Deebo, no question.
So it's CeeDee Lamb is also over Stephon Diggs?
Yeah.
I'll take
for me.
I'd go with CeeDee Lamb.
What about Jalen Waddle?
Now, that's a good question. I'll go with Diggs there, but it's really close.
Yeah, I think I'd still go Diggs. It's I want to say Waddle, but if I'm setting my lineup right now, I wouldn't start Waddle over Diggs.
I think
we just
Waddle
talked
might
about
be the
Jamar
right
Chase.
answer.
Jamar Chase or him, Stephon Diggs.
I go Chase.
Man, that is
I
close.
think that's where I'll still go Stephon Diggs there, but they're literally back to back for me the rest of the
season.
He's
he's top 15-ish is what he is for me. So back end wide receiver. Honestly, more of a wide receiver, high end wide receiver 2 versus a back end wide receiver 1 at this point.
I agree.
And it's not
the
because
fact that we're talking about Waddle or Stephon Diggs is nuts. It's nuts.
Right. Well, and he's still got 13 targets, but there's plenty of other receiving options. Cole Beasley got 11 targets. Dawson Knox got 9 targets. Gabe Davis got 8 targets. Devin Singletary 7 targets. So Josh Allen is spreading the ball around. It's not that Stephon Diggs is playing bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just there's a lot of options, and Josh Allen is using them.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Stephon
Diggs is still the number 9 receiver on the season. He's still a guy you want in your lineup, but we're not telling you not to start him. We're just saying you got to lower that expectations because he's not a locked and loaded wide receiver 1 anymore.
Also, welcome in. Come here now, Beach 89. Glad to have you here. Thanks for jumping in at the end.
And Tom Brady on the other side of the ball. Tom Brady is Tom Brady. Over 300 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. He rushed for another touchdown. Leonard Fournette continues to do what he's done all season long. I think league winner is a term that's thrown around way too much in the fantasy football space. If you were able to get Leonard Fournette, he is a true league winner. He was somebody who was available on a ton of waiver wires, and he's a locked and loaded RB1. He's involved in the passing game, 4 catches, 19 rushes, 113 yards, a touchdown. There's really not much else to say about Leonard Fournette other than he is good.
Leonard
Chris
Fournette
Godwin,
or Joe Mixon. I want to ask you guys, Leonard Fournette or Joe Mixon. Next week, just next week, not rest of the season.
What are the matchups?
Yeah, I got you. So Joe Mixon is playing the Denver Broncos, who have a good defense. It's going to be Leonard Fournette for me. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to look at Leonard Fournette's matchup. It doesn't matter. Leonard Fournette with his pass catching upside every week that Joe Mixon doesn't quite have. I think Joe Mixon's maybe a lock for more carries, but that hasn't been the case all year. Yeah,
the Bengals offense has struggled. They haven't looked as good as they did earlier in the season, so you don't have to worry about that with the Bucs offense. So yeah, I'm with you.
I'm in agreement with you guys there. We do have a question before we wrap up, guys. Coming now, Beach 89. I assume this is rest of season. Wants to know Antonio Gibson or Najee Harris.
Regardless, is easy Najee.
It's Najee.
Yep, Najee. No question for me.
And some presidential trivia. Who's the only president to serve on the Supreme Court? I love your presidential trivia. Do you guys know this one? I know it, but I'll let you.
Taft.
You are 100% right. Josh, that's the right answer. It's William Howard Taft.
No, it's
the only president who's ever served on the Supreme Court, appointed by
I promise everyone I did not look that up or anything. My mind's blown right now. That
I don't believe you. I didn't see your hands the whole time. I think you looked it up on the spot.
I'm like about to cry. I don't know how I got that. I thought it was a joke when I said Taft.
Trivia whiz Josh down there. Nice job.
What?
And JL coming in saying, wow.
I actually knew that too. I just wanted to give Josh this moment.
My mind is blown right now.
Jay, before we jump, is there anything else on this game that you want to make sure we're hitting?
Not really. Pretty well. Chris Godwin got 15 targets, which is pretty nice.
Good God.
But I mean, it's what you expect at this point in time. Chris Godwin seems to be the guy that right now is the apple of Tom Brady's eye.
What a valuable franchise tag that dude got put on, because he is going to get paid this offseason. Oh my gosh. Is he about to make so much money after this year? We've got one more question. Coming up, Beach 89 says, did you find any of the calls in the Bills-Bucks games questionable? None that stand out ridiculously to me. Josh, were there any that stood out to you? Like, there are questionable calls each and every week. I know some games are worse than others, but
to be completely honest, we didn't get to watch the very end of this game.
Yeah, we did not see.
I don't know if there was some questionable calls at the end there that you might be speaking of. So just the full transparency there, but nothing that I saw stood out to me.
Right. First half, same, pretty much exactly what Josh said. Watch most of the first half. Nothing out of, astronomically terrible. But
yep. Guys, that is
But
going to
you-
be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
Just real fast. You got some fantasy off. This is like one of the best fantasy offenses like ever. Leonard Fournette, every week you're starting him. 2 wide receivers. You're starting a tight end. And you're starting their quarterback. This offense is loaded. I just had to. Good job, Tom Brady. I don't know how you continue to do it, but you're amazing.
He is amazing. Guys, that is going to be it for us this week. I know we all want to go watch some Sunday night football, so I'm going to get ready for that. Enjoy your Sunday night. Before we go, though, a couple things. Number one, if you enjoyed this, if we helped you at all, if you just like coming and hanging out and talking football, hit that like button on this video and make sure you're subscribed to FanDuel on YouTube. And you can also find them over on Twitch at FanDuel, Twitter at FanDuel, Instagram at FanDuel, and TikTok, you guessed it, at FanDuel. They're FanDuel on all of them. And they have an awesome team of content creators helping you win your leagues and win some money. So make sure you guys are subscribed over there. That is it for us this Sunday, though. Josh, Jay, myself, and our bud JL will be back next Sunday at the same time, 7 o'clock Eastern.
First round of the fantasy football playoffs.
Oh, baby. So make sure you come hang out with us next Sunday. Until then, we are out of here. Adios, everyone.
Love you guys. Trading makes fantasy fun.